This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited Podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited Podcast. On this episode, we have an awesome guest. He's been cranking out Dynasty content for several years now from Dynasty Rewind. It's Michael Bauer. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And yeah, it's 5 years this year. It's our 5-year anniversary in May. It was.
Congratulations. I mean, that's 5 years goes fast. It was definitely an interesting 5 years. Obviously, you've taken it back from where we are now. But yeah, congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So for listeners and viewers that might be unfamiliar with your work, what is Dynasty Rewind and what is your role over there?
Yeah, so I am the creator and host of the Dynasty Rewind Podcast. We create Dynasty content 24/7, but 365 days a year. That's what we focus on. Not saying we don't like other formats. So obviously, we play everything. But Dynasty is just what we love. We do focus a lot on college, too, scouting in the offseason. Leading up to the NFL draft. But yeah, so I'm, like I said, host, creator. My name, Rewind CEO. It's because somebody once said, you're like the CEO of this whole thing. So yeah, that's how I got I still call it Twitter. I don't know if anyone else does. That's how I got my Twitter handle. So
exactly. That makes sense. Definitely makes sense. Now, from a consumer perspective, what are your favorite aspects of the Dynasty Rewind content?
I think the one thing that I try to tell the guys, and I try to live true to this too, is, number one, own your losses. It's okay to admit that you were wrong about something. There's nothing wrong with that. We can't predict everything accurately. I thought Zamir White was going to be good this year. Well, boy, was I wrong. Own your losses, admit when you're wrong, and don't just conform to the narrative that's out there. People, they get stuck on narratives, and when you kind of stray away from that a little bit, you get, I don't know, people just get a little irritable online, social media, in the YouTube comments, stuff like that. So, but it's okay to be different. And, people ask me, should I start a podcast? The space is convoluted. Yeah, you have a voice. Let it be heard. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. At least you could say you tried.
That's great. That's great advice for sure. Hey, let's rewind. You see how I did that? Let's rewind back a few years.
Okay.
Talk to me about your favorite teams and players growing up. Obviously, you're an Eagles fan, but yeah,
Yep.
share with me across the sports landscape. Like, who were the guys that did it for you back in the day?
So I am an Eagles fan, as you guys could see, and as Kevin just mentioned. And the guy that got me into it is downstairs watching my daughter right now, my dad. Oddly enough, one of my first memories of football, becoming more cognizant of it. The Chargers played the 49ers in the Super Bowl. And I remember cheering for the Chargers so hard because I really wanted them, the underdogs. Philadelphia fans have that mentality of the underdog mentality. So I was cheering for them pretty hard. Obviously, they did not pull it out. But then I just started to watch football with my dad more. And he's like, hey, we're Eagles fans in this house, just so you know. Funny thing is, my mother always used to torment my dad because, in case you don't know, Eagles fans, we hate the Dallas Cowboys. My mom would always cheer for the Cowboys. And I remember he looked at her once. He goes, you do it one more time, everything you own is going to be out in the yard. And that ended that pretty quick. But my favorite player growing up, I didn't really have a favorite per se, but when Jeremiah Trotter came in, so I was about 13 when he got drafted. I was a linebacker, in case you guys don't know. He was my favorite Eagle, and he was the axe man because he got his physique from cutting down trees. So that axe handle in the back is actually signed by Jeremiah Trotter. So in case you guys are watching our content and wondering, why does this dude have an axe handle there? That's why.
That's awesome. No, I love it. What's the worst loss you ever experienced as a sports fan?
Looking at the sheet you sent me, this was the one that kind of this is the one that's hardest for me to pinpoint. But believe it or not, it was the 2006 playoff game, Saints against the Eagles. That was the Sheldon Brown, Reggie Bush hit. So that was the first offensive play of the game for the Saints. They flip it out to Reggie Bush, and Sheldon Brown just whacks him. So right then and there, we're like, this game is ours. And that season, Donovan McNabb tore his ACL. Jeff Garcia came in. Andy Reid actually conceded play calling to Marty Morningwig, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, we're like, hey, this team kind of gritty. Maybe we could do it. Unfortunately, after that, they forgot how to tackle. So that one stuck in my craw a lot. And, being an Eagles fan and a Philadelphia sports fan in general, there's been a lot of painful losses. But for whatever reason, that was the game that kind of stuck out to me the most. thinking about it. And
Sure.
the two Super Bowls that I watched them lose sucked pretty bad too.
Yeah, no, obviously with sports, a lot of times it is just a little wrinkle that's maybe a little different than you'd expect as your worst moment. I like that it's not a Super Bowl loss, because sometimes, you get to the Super Bowl, everything's on the table. It is what it is. But something like that, a playoff loss, sometimes can be worse than a Super Bowl loss.
It can.
I say that as a Seahawks fan, and I still am tormented by, Marshawn not getting the ball on the goal line. But I can say that, yeah, it's true. There's some quirky games out there that definitely stand out to me. How about your favorite moment as a sports fan of all time?
Honestly, I would love to say when they won Super Bowl 52. But for me, my favorite sports memory of all time was when I could finally afford to buy my dad tickets, and him and I went to an Eagles game. So it was Fan Appreciation Day. It was the 2004 season. It was the last game of the year. That was the year that the Eagles went to the Super Bowl and eventually lost to the Patriots. It was a crappy game. They had already had the 1 seed locked up. Jeff Blake started a quarterback for the Eagles that game. They did not appreciate the fans very much that game because it was a snooze fest. But just the fact that I was finally making money, I could afford to do this for my dad, the guy who got me into it. That's what really was one of my favorite moments. There's one of the only my dad doesn't display a lot of pictures. He's not like a super sentimental guy, but there's a picture of him and I that we got somebody to take of us in one of the hallways at Lincoln Financial Field. And he's got that one displayed at his house. So that's a cool moment for me. And I really, terrible weather that game too. It was awful, but it was cool going down there. Yeah.
That's what it's all about to me. I think that, again, you could easily say, Nick Foles, win the Super Bowl.
That was
But
cool.
something sentimental like that, it's
But
atypical. Those are the moments in sports, especially bonds between a father and a son. I mean, that's pretty spectacular.
the thing about
So
that, can I just touch on one thing real quick?
yeah.
True fandom isn't about the super highs. True fandom is about, the little nuances of every single season and every single off season. And the wins are great, but there's something to be said about how you can grow as a person and as a fan from the losses too. I've admittedly toned down how I was for two reasons. One, I saw him win a Super Bowl, and that was the plateau. And two, I have a daughter now. I don't want her to see me being a lunatic when they lose. Also, these millionaires, they don't really care if I'm sad that they lost the game. You know what I mean? So I treat it more as a business when I watch football now, especially doing this.
Sure.
Try to be a little more analytical and not let it get to me. Except last week, I was very irritable the way that they played against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I love
That
it.
was just embarrassing. They were not really.
Yeah, that happened. Hey, I just, my Seahawks played last night against the Niners, and that was not pleasant. So, but you're right. You gotta control yourself these days. I mean, I think fandom can get out of hand sometimes, but that's a great perspective, and it's true. It's I love looking back on those old memories again. Like you with your dad. I mean, that's pretty special, and sports can definitely do that, especially with communities. And you've probably seen it with Phillies playoff baseball. Like it gets people riled up, and
It does, yeah.
and it's good stuff for sure. So when along the way did you discover fantasy sports?
Well, again, that goes back to my dad. He said to me, "Hey, you know everything, Mr. Know-It-All." I didn't, by the way. Why don't you try this fantasy football that I've been hearing about so much? That was about 2006. I started playing. Very quickly learned, don't just draft your favorite players. Don't draft too many players from the same team. And, it just kind of grew from there. And then I think in like 2015, 2016, I'm like, man, there's got to be something else, right? There has to be something else that we can do that's more long term. And my brother-in-law and I got together and we started our first Dynasty League.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember back in the day consuming content? Do you remember, getting exposed to certain analysts?
Yeah, I do. So the first ever Dynasty podcast I listened to, and also the first job I had in the fantasy space, it was Dynasty Nerds. Rich Dotson, which if you guys ever get a chance to meet Rich Dotson, he's exactly the same in real life as he is on the podcast. Super cool guy. The three big ones that I used to listen to was them, the FF Dynasty, and DLF podcast. And, you find other ones along the way. But, one of the things too, if you want to make content, get your audio right. That's all I can tell you about why I didn't stop listening to other podcasts. And you can do it cheap. You don't have to spend a ton of money.
Yeah, that's great advice, and it is true.
Yeah,
People really they care about that quality of
they
sound,
do.
whether they know it or not, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely true because when you're listening to a podcast, there's no visualization of it. There's just
Hmm.
that your logo on your phone or computer, however people consume it. So that has to be, it's really important.
Got to get it dialed in.
Yes.
So when it comes to fantasy, what was it initially that got you hooked?
It's just fun and it gives you a way to kind of pay attention to the rest of the league and broaden your horizons. And you get in a league and you get together with your guys and you have a good time and say, hey, this is fun. And it's, I don't want to say it's an excuse to hang out, but we're married guys here. It's not easy getting time to hang out with your guys sometimes because the everyday life aspect of just living gets in the way of friendships and stuff like that. And same thing happens with my wife. I'm sure with you as well. So like, hey, honey, I got a draft today. It's hang out with the boys, couple beers, some wings. It's a good time.
It is for sure. Yeah, fantasy keeps people connected. That's what I love about the game for
It
sure.
really does.
Do you have any like all time favorite memories associated with fantasy? League experiences, that kind of stuff.
So one of my favorite things, and this was when our first Dynasty League was a few years old. My team was not good that year. Had to rebuild pretty quick. This one guy was just talking trash to me all week because his team was so much better than mine. I go to bed Monday night losing. I'm like, man, screw this. I'm done. I'm out. I woke up the next morning and I had won by point 0.4.
No
And
way.
I, to this day, I do not let him live that down. So
Was it a stat correction or was it just a final moment? Something happened? Do you remember?
yeah, his quarterback, I forget who it was, threw an interception.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that took enough points away.
Yeah,
And I'm like, oh, there it is.
I love
Love it.
that.
Yeah,
That's
it was amazing.
that's great. Any fun traditions in your home leagues that you've had over the years?
You know, not really. The first league that I was in, which I'm no longer a part of, we used to get together for the draft every year. That was fun. But now it's just so hard. And being in the industry and everybody's so spread out, it's hard to really get together. So unfortunately, I do not have any good traditions, and I will not be joining a tattoo league. People stop asking me, please. I'm not doing it. I'm not getting a crappy tattoo because I came in last. Not
That's probably a good choice.
yeah.
So do you consider like your home dynasty league, like or that league you said you created with your brother?
It was my
Is that like
brother-in-law.
yeah, your brother-in-law is that your main league? Is that the one you care about the most?
No, I'm not actually in that one anymore. I did
Okay.
leave. It kind of dissolved a little bit. No, I started a league um, with my co-host Nate Christian. He lives relatively close to me, about 2.5 hours away, and some other guys that I know from the fantasy space um, that are all somewhat local within like a 2.5 hour drive of here. My goal was to get a a draft in person. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
we've not been able to get that going. Obviously, COVID the one year, blah blah blah. But I consider that league my quote unquote home league.
That's the one you care about the most. I got you.
Yeah,
I got you.
and I'm not doing well this year either. It's not working out for me so far. And that one
Hey, it
hurts.
happens. It's fantasy.
Yeah.
Who's your biggest rival that you would consider, over the years or even present day in fantasy?
You mean that I play against?
Yeah, who's one person that like that's it's the most important to win against?
It's easily Nate by
Okay.
far and
Yeah,
away.
makes
And
sense.
we're in so many leagues together too. It seems like almost every week we're playing each other somewhere. Um, and he's the guy I always want to beat. I've had his number pretty well so far this year. In the past, it always hasn't been that way. But yeah, we tend to play each other a lot. So he's the guy I always want to beat, man.
I love it. You gotta have that one person for
Oh
sure.
yeah, for sure.
What are your favorite settings, formats in fantasy? I know obviously Dynasty is gonna come
Yeah.
up here.
But I mean, you could just take the dynasty aspect out of it too. 12 teams super flex. I don't hate tight end premium. Um, I'm fine with or without it. Some people are really all about it, and I could go either way. But I really love median scoring. I'm kind of really
Okay.
getting into that. That actually got me into the playoffs in one league last year. I didn't win the league, but I was able to get into a monetary position where I think I got my league fee back, which was great. So I love median scoring, but I'm also really getting into C2C as well.
Okay.
I just love the college aspect of it. And people are like, oh, it's too much. It's like, look, it's not that hard. When you're starting out, draft people Okay, there's plenty of resources out there. And when you're going down 40th round, here's a freshman running back from Georgia that no one's drafted yet. Perfect. I'll take that. And you pay attention to these guys, and that only helps you play Dynasty later, right? Because now you know
Yeah.
these guys, got them in your brain. So getting in the C to C, yeah, but just 12 teams, super flex. Nothing really fancy for me. No auctions though.
Okay, no
I
auction.
can't do
Yeah,
auctions, man.
shout out to Campus to Canton. That's, I mean, what an incredible format. Definitely,
Fantastic.
for diehards for sure.
Yeah.
But I like that. It's true. Yeah, when it comes to Dynasty, it's such a perfect, next step, right? It's
It is. Yeah.
let's see what's coming down the pipeline. Definitely a format people should be checking out. So when it comes to Dynasty, though, there are people that haven't played. Is there a pitch? Do you have a pitch for people that are considering playing Dynasty?
Yeah, it's the next step. It's just if you're a massive football fan, it is the next step because it's year round. You could do stuff with your team in the off season. Make trading is fun. I find that trading is so much more fun in Dynasty, and I never really trade in a seasonal league, because it doesn't really, for me, it doesn't really always pan out.
Yeah.
Trading's fun. The waiver wire is way different than in a seasonal league. It's just, hey, this guy is a pulse, might get me a point. I need somebody. We're gonna pick him up for 12 fab dollars.
Yeah.
It's year round. It's 24/7, 365. It's my favorite.
What's your favorite time on the calendar, the Dynasty calendar? What's your favorite? Is it in season? Is it the
Oh,
draft? Is it?
no, I hate it season. I hate setting lineups, even though I like
Yeah.
playing Dynasty. That's not my strong suit. I love rookie draft season.
Yeah.
Especially me doing scouting and just mock drafts and stuff like that we do on our channel. I love that the most. I love the draft. It is so much fun. We all get together for the draft, the guys in the Dynasty Rewind. We live stream. So like I take a day off work Friday, we'll live stream Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning. We've been putting out a rookie draft guide the last 2 years. We'll be coming out with another one. Rookie draft guide is going to be different this year. Stay tuned for that. But I love rookie draft season.
Yeah, I know it's addicting. I grew up, obsessed with the draft. I remember back in the day, it was on Saturday and Sunday, and as a kid,
The way it
none of my
should be NFL.
exactly right. So yeah, none of my friends, could care less, right? But I just, that was like my favorite weekend of the year.
Yeah.
I was young, but man, that draft, all that excitement, all the hope for what's to come, and then you couple that with fantasy football, and yeah, it makes Dynasty pretty special. I'm addicted to gathering draft picks, just to have more, have more invested into the draft because I too I love that time of year for sure. So when it comes to diving into the community, you said that you got 5-year anniversary here.
Mhm.
What was it that inspired you to join in and get involved?
So there was, and it was my favorite podcast. It was called the Back Row Fantasy Show, hosted by Jeremy Barker, who I'm still friends with to this day. He, like I said, he was doing that podcast, and I just reached out to him. We became friends, and I was like, man, I'm thinking about starting it. I don't know if I'm good enough. He told me do it, and gave me some advice on getting set up audio wise. And I just kind of went from there. And he's like, hey, if I could do it, you could do it. I was like, all right, yeah, cool. And that's what I tell people too. If I could do it, you can. Well, I don't know how to do this and this. Neither did I. You have Google, you have YouTube, you have people you could ask and get advice from. There's plenty of people out here. If you reached out to me and said, I want to start a podcast, but I don't know what to buy, here's a list of things I recommend to get you started cheaply and still sound decent. This is a $36 microphone I'm using. I don't need anything fancy. People are like, oh, I'm going to buy a Shure SM7B. The fantasy footballers use that. It's a $400 microphone. You could do it for way cheaper. I like kind of the back end stuff too. I like editing. I like the audio stuff. I enjoy that stuff.
So what sites have you contributed at, over the years?
I Dynasty Nerds was my first place, and then I did some writing for the FF Dynasty. I did an extensive amount of writing for a website called ASL, Advanced Sports Logic. And I think then I got to a point where my show started to grow a little bit more, and I had to make a choice. Either this doesn't grow and I keep doing all this other stuff. At that point, I had a newborn. So I had to decide which way I wanted to go. And I decided I have to stop all this other stuff and just focus on myself at some point, and not just if you want to create content, but in your life, you have to bet on yourself
Yeah.
for better or for worse. If you fail, at least you tried. And that's what I did. And it's worked out pretty well. I will say this, biggest recommendation I can make. If you do want to start creating content, you're not going to make thousands of dollars right away. It takes a long time. Start a Patreon, it's not going to pop off right away. But if you start making some money, start an LLC, because that money's going to have to come somewhere. And if it comes to you, you will be liable for that money. The government doesn't care how much it is. They're going to come get their share. So LLC, look into it in your state. I did it at my kitchen table in 20 minutes. It's not that hard.
It's great. Yeah, great advice. Important advice for sure.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest challenge though so far for you
Um,
along the way?
Honestly, the biggest challenge is managing a group of people. And I have a really great crew. I'll say that. But everybody has a personality. Everybody has a way that they like and don't like to be managed. So, if you're just creating content or if you're starting a whole brand, you have to realize that there are personalities and there's individuals involved. That goes for your crew. That goes for your clientele too, be that listeners, viewers on YouTube or what be it. So you have to, I don't want to say you have to have a neutral personality, but you have to be open, you have to be reachable, and you have to be calm and compassionate. There's going to be times where you're going to have to be the voice of reason for your crew. But then there's other times where you unfortunately have to say and do things that will irritate people. But if you start an LLC, a business in any capacity, you have to just let people know, hey, I'm in charge. This is my brand. This is the direction we're going, and you're part of it or you're not. And yes, I have had to have those conversations in the past. It sucks, but that's part of it.
How rewarding has this been? What's been the most rewarding aspect of this journey for you?
Um, you know, going to places like the expo and people coming up and going, "Hey, I've been listening to you for years. It's great to finally meet you. Love your content." Just stuff like that is really rewarding to me. People DMing me, "Hey, you said do this, I did it and it paid off." I'm like, "Great. That's fantastic." Just knowing that I could help people, or if you can't help them, entertain them at least. And another piece of advice I give people is be yourself. Don't be what people want you to be. I'd rather have somebody hate me for me than like me for something I'm not, which is why I am who I am. This what you see here or on my channel, that's how I am in real life.
That's great. This is good stuff, man. Now, when it comes to Dynasty, like, are there certain strategies you have, like from startup to rebuild? Like, is there certain tendencies that you typically have?
Um, it's hard to say. I approach every startup draft a little bit differently. Like I might go, and it also depends on your draft spot too. I might go, I'm going hero RB here, or I'm just loading up on wide receivers. And I like to punt the premium a lot. So like super flex, I'll wait on quarterbacks. Tight end premium, I'll wait on tight ends. Waiting on tight ends this year would have been a good year to do that.
Yeah.
Honestly, you could have gotten Jake Ferguson later. He's been smashing. Um, or guys like Dalton Schultz. Although I wish he'd do a little bit more, but now with Nico Collins out, he might. Who knows? We'll see. So I like to punt the premium, build around wide receivers. That's across the board at the Dynasty Rewind. I tell people build your team around stud wide receivers. You don't have to worry about that. And I focus on depth. A lot of times in the later rounds, people are like, "Oh, I only want to draft people that I think are going to start." That's all well and fine, but sometimes the best player on a bad team is not as good as the second best player, third best player on a good team.
That's good. That's great. Great advice. Now, you mentioned the expo. You mentioned, obviously we talked a little bit about
I love.
community. How much have the relationships that you've established in the fantasy community meant to you over the years?
So we don't, or Bob Lung does not get enough credit for what he has done with the Fantasy Football Expo. First one was in 19. I couldn't make it. I had actually just been out in Ohio 2 weeks before. I'm like, I'm not driving back out to Ohio. Not doing it. Sorry, Ohio. Then it was canceled in 2020, obviously. And then 2021, for those of you who do not create content, for whatever reason, there was a lot of tension on Twitter, specifically people beefing. And it's just, we all have egos. Like I said before, I feel like 2021 kind of like calmed that all down. And it's more of a friendship thing now. And it's fantastic. I love going out there, and I've met people out there. You and I kind of knew each other, but we hadn't really talked. We talked this year at the expo, which was fantastic. But just seeing all these new people and connecting with people, a lot of good things come out of it. It's typically a nice weekend, middle of August in Ohio. Typically decent out there. Try to find new things every time I go out. But it's great. And, honestly, sometimes it's the only time of year I could see some of my crew because we go from Connecticut to Florida to Wisconsin to Tennessee to Georgia. We're all over the country. We actually have a guy out in, I think he lives in Portland.
Okay.
There's somewhere out there. I'm not 100% sure. He couldn't make it this year because his sister is graduating from college. So whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it is an amazing event. You got people like you kind of described, people coming from all over every corner of the country, with that common bond. The love for football and for fantasy. But I just love. Yeah, I've seen so many great relationships formed,
It's awesome.
professional relationships, personal relationships. The experience I've experienced, a ton over these years, having attended, the same, the same conferences or the same events that you have. It's been amazing, and it is different every year because you do get these relationships growing and growing. And so amazing event. If you can make it, you got to go, because people that go, they always come back because it is such a special event. What is your favorite event of the expo weekend typically?
Probably the Friday night party,
Yeah.
honestly. And I know I should be saying the expo itself, but by the time you get to the actual expo, you're so freaking tired. But I like the Friday night party at Centennial Plaza. That's just, it seems to me like a little bit more of an intimate affair. You know what I mean? The stadium party's cool. Don't get me wrong, but everyone's just too spread out. Centennial Plaza, you're a little bit closer together.
Yeah.
So that's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, that's an amazing event. That venue is really cool, and
It is.
it's close. It's close to the DoubleTree if you're staying there. But yeah, and it's the kickoff. It really kind of kicks things off. People start showing up. It's definitely a special part of the weekend for sure. Let's dive into some rapid fire questions. I'll just throw out some questions. Let me know what first comes to mind.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy most about what you're doing in the industry right now?
Just right this second or overall?
Just overall.
Like I said before, I love scouting and the rookie draft season. It's definitely my favorite.
So at this stage, what's your Super Bowl prediction?
This is the other question that I was having a hard time with because I would have said the Eagles, but now I don't know. It's probably going to be the Chiefs, most likely. And I'm going to say the Packers.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
don't
Okay.
ask me to pick a winner, though.
Really? Okay. Packers. That's a good take right there. I would have.
I love what they're doing out there, man. I love Jordan Love. I think Matt LaFleur is a really good coach. Great receiving core, great tight ends. Their defense is pretty good too.
Yeah, I think Packers and Lions definitely going to be battling out for the division and obviously for the conference.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard not to just assume Kansas City's going to be there some way, because they when they hit the playoffs, they always ramp it up too. So scary stuff. Scary stuff if you're looking to win a Super Bowl when Kansas City's rolling the way it is, despite injuries, and it just nothing seems to stop those guys. And so it's hard to bet against them for sure. At this stage, who do you expect to be the fantasy MVP at the end of the day?
This is another tough one because we have not seen the fantasy season go the way we thought it would. Mm-hmm. I think at this point, in early August, we would have said Christian McCaffrey again. But I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson for right now. He's really putting together a good season. We could also make a case for Derrick Henry, who looks like an absolute monster. But give me Lamar Jackson because Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes has not looked as good, but they got some wide receiver issues that they need to figure out too.
How about Saquon? I mean, we're talking about fantasy MVPs, kind of the guy that kind of definitely slips.
Yeah.
Definitely passed on him a little bit. He's playing incredible.
Yeah. Fun fact about Saquon Barkley: he went to high school about 10 minutes away from where I am currently. So his parents still live across the bridge from me in Copley as well. But Saquon could be in the mix too. Let's see how it goes. Let's see if Nick Sirianni escapes the season. I don't know. There's been a lot of contention there, so we'll see.
We'll see what happens.
Right.
Can you name a person that you love to watch a game with, just to see their perspective on it?
Yeah, there's a lot of people, but I've always been a big Andy Holloway fan. I did get to interview him once. Just class act, great guy. I'm like, I would love to just sit down and just watch it. I'd love to watch an Eagles-Cardinals game with Andy Holloway. I know he's a Cardinals fan. That would be really fun.
That's a good one. What are your favorite hobbies and activities outside of sports?
So outside of sports, I like photography. I've been taking a lot of pictures, and I love to read. Reading is my favorite thing in the world to do. I read every night before I go to bed for at least 15 minutes. So
any favorite genres?
I kind of go all over the place. Like I love fiction. I like alternate fiction too, or I'm sorry, I also like alternate history. Like, there's ones like, what if World War II would have went differently? And then people write like a whole universe about that. History I'm into as well. So I'm kind of all over the place. Not a big biography guy though. I guess it depends on the person, but
Okay. How about an all-time favorite TV show?
The Office.
It's a great answer. It's a great answer.
And since I live in Eastern Pennsylvania, you can go up to Scranton. I've been to Port Richards. I went to Alfredo's Pizza Cafe. Or is it Pizza by Alfredo's? No, it's Pizza Cafe. There's murals all over the place. Lots of cool stuff. And if you're in the area or close to it, the Steamtown Mall has a fantastic aquarium and reptile den too. Pretty cheap as well. My daughter loves it there. Just
Hey, that's some great advice.
Yeah.
How about an all-time favorite movie?
Probably Predator. I actually have a
Okay.
Predator poster. You guys can't see it from where it is, but it's on my far wall.
Nice. How about a
That or
sports movie?
Lethal Weapon. It's a really, really close 1 and 2.
Okay, that's good. How about a sports movie?
Why am I blanking on? Oh, The Replacements.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
There are people that don't like that movie that like football. I'm like, first of all, Keanu Reeves, okay? Gene Hackman. It
Yeah.
is just such a freaking good movie. It's everything you want. I love that movie.
Definitely an underrated movie when
It
it
really
comes
is.
to I think a lot of people haven't seen it. That's probably true.
Go watch it now.
There you go. Go watch it, The Replacements. How about a favorite artist or band or musician?
Yeah, so I may not present as such. I'm actually a huge heavy metal fan. My favorite band of all time is Slayer. So I grew up a metal kid. My cousin and I used to listen to it all the time. Were you guys expecting me to say Taylor Swift? Because that's not going to happen. No, big time metalhead, and I'm Slayer all the way.
I love it. How about a favorite vacation you ever been on?
I'm not going to say. Does your honeymoon count as a vacation? Right?
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
we went to St. Lucia on my honeymoon.
Ooh, okay.
Beautiful. I will say, if you go to St. Lucia, be warned, the resorts are not on the same side of the island as the airport. Is an hour and a half drive. Those vehicles are not safe to be in, and it is very hilly. It's very twisty and turny, and those guys drive like nut jobs. So whenever you book in the Caribbean, however you want to say it, make sure that the hotel is close or the resort is decently close to the airport.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's break from this rapid fire for a second. I've been to St. Lucia. I assume that you probably had sandals, maybe.
Yeah, we were at
Accurate?
Sandals Halcyon.
Okay, yeah. So we went there. Oh gosh, probably I don't know, 15 years ago.
Gorgeous.
And yeah, and I, again, amazing place. I love the sandals there. It's nice, there's multiple, so you can kind of go to different places for dinner and everything.
Yeah.
But we got there, and I've always told my wife, I'm not a huge helicopter guy. I'm not a big fan of helicopters. Just, I've always tried to kind of stay away from helicopters. We get there, and she's like, "Hey, we're like in the airport," and she's like, "Hey, let's go over here and check this out." And it was like this helicopter station. I'm like, "What? You're messing with me." She pre-booked that. So we skipped that jungle drive. We skipped that ride that you just described. We took the helicopter over the top, which was efficient, and it was good. It was no
That's
regrets. It was a ton of fun. It was beautiful, but it was definitely a surprise. Something that I immediately was not excited about, but it worked out really good.
no,
I made it. So
I mean, if my wife would have done that, I would have been mad. Like, how much did you spend on this?
yeah,
But at the same point in time, I've always wanted to go on a helicopter, so that would be pretty cool too. Yeah.
it's my soul helicopter ride, and that was probably the perfect island to hit that up for
For
sure.
sure.
Okay, so how about a number one bucket list travel item,
Easy.
travel destination for you?
Alaska.
Okay,
And I just don't think it's going to happen. My wife is, to her, vacation equals beach. Alaska does not equal beach. Therefore, we are not going to Alaska. So, but I love the whole concept of it. Everything I've seen, it looks beautiful. So I really want to go there. It's very far from Eastern Pennsylvania and very hard to get to and expensive, but maybe I'll get to retire one day. And if she doesn't want to go, I'm just going to go by myself. I don't care.
I love it. Yeah,
Okay.
keep it on that bucket list. It makes sense for me. I'm in Seattle. Most of those, Alaskan cruises are leaving from here.
Oh yeah. So
Still, I've never done it. We've never done it yet. It's
you know why
definitely
you
on
haven't
our
done it?
list.
I'm gonna tell you why you haven't done it, because you could easily do it. That's
Yeah.
why. You could
Yeah.
do it anytime. Just like me, I could drive to Toronto in 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't even drive to Nashville in 8 hours. So I'd go anytime, and I just don't. I could go to Niagara Falls pretty easily, and I don't. I've never been there. I'm gonna be 40 in January, and I got all this stuff I wanna do. But it's because you can that you haven't, because you wanna go do other things. It happens all the time.
Well, it's true. I always hear, people on the East Coast say Hawaii, and I'm like, I'm on the West Coast. I'm saying you got to go to the Caribbean, right? It's always
Yeah.
you always want to go like the furthest because it's the most different. But yeah, Alaska's definitely on our list. It's just we just haven't got around to it
If
because
you do, send
vac-
me pictures, please.
I will for sure. Vacation comes up, and it's like we want the beach. We're
Yeah,
in Seattle. It's raining. Like, why would we go to Alaska? But I agree with you. It's
good
it's
point.
it's beautiful. Definitely a place you got to get to at some point in your life. So at this point, what are you most grateful for?
It's very easily my family. I was at a point in my life in my mid-20s, I was like, it's not gonna happen for me. Just striking out with crazy women. And then I met my wife, and she's just a very caring and loving, fantastic person. I never really wanted to be a dad, but then when I found out my wife was pregnant, she had some fertility issues, and I'm not oversharing here. It's things that she's shared before as well. Um, yeah, so we didn't think it was gonna happen, and then it did, and I'm just so grateful. People are like, "Oh, I bet you wish you had a son." Nah, my daughter's awesome. She's great. She's everything I could have ever wanted, just like my wife is. So they're great. They're very supportive. Well, my daughter is as supportive as a 5-year-old can be. So they're fantastic, and very grateful to have them in my life.
That's fantastic. As a fellow girl dad, I echo all those sentiments. I
You
love
get it.
that.
Yeah.
Now, can you name some of the people along the way in your journey in the fantasy space that have had an impact on you?
Yeah. My wife, obviously, for encouraging me. Rich Dotson, Jeremy Barker, Garrett Price was the first co-host of the Dynasty Rewind. Chevin Nooney was the second. All my crew, current, past, the guys at the FF Dynasty for giving me a chance to write for them as well. And one of the most motivational people that, if I ever have any questions or anything, Bob Harris has always been kind of like a guiding light for me. Great guy. If you go to the expo and you get to meet Bob Harris, just a fantastic human being across the board. And Bob Lung as well. First ever guest on the Dynasty Rewind was him. Came on, he talked about his consistency guide, which if you play seasonal, I highly recommend picking that up. Get on Amazon. It's pretty cheap. Yeah, there's been a lot of people. I'm sure people I'm forgetting. If I've forgotten you, I'm sorry. But those are the ones that just stick out the most right now.
No, it's a great list for sure. And it's funny, Bob Lung was the first guest on this podcast
Was
as
he
well. So
really?
yeah, he was. Indeed,
That's
indeed.
Look at that. That's cool.
That's awesome. And yeah, and Bob Harris, I mean, talk about one of the nicest guys on the planet. Dynasty
He
nerds guys. I mean, it's a great list for sure. What advice? You have been dropping a ton of advice for people, this whole show. But any other advice you have for people who want to get more involved in the fantasy content space?
Yeah, if you're gonna bet on anything, bet on yourself. If you think you could do it, just try. My DMs are open. I am not the best at responding, admittedly. So bear with me if you do DM me, which Kevin, you should know all too well that I take a little bit to respond sometimes. Uh, but yeah, just bet on yourself, be yourself, let your personality show. A lot of times people in podcasts, they focus too much on just getting to the point. I don't mind some banter when a show starts up. I actually, if I like a podcast or show, I care about those people.
Yeah.
I had a bad day. I'm like, well, let's hear about it. What's going on? Or, humorous things that happened. I love stuff like that. So be yourself. A little bit of banter is not bad, not too much, but yeah, give it a shot.
That's good. I mean, it's great advice because that entertainment factor is definitely can be underrated at some point. I mean, look at the success of the fantasy footballers, the way that they have done their thing over the years, and it's people connecting with those guys and thinking that they're the fourth person at the table, right? It's any successful show, especially when you have multiple members on the show. It's your audience is definitely connecting with you, and so
Yeah,
in feeling like they're part of it. So keep that banter up. I think it's great advice.
exactly.
Michael, anything else we haven't covered that you want to share before we close things out? I love some of the stuff you said about some of the things you're doing with Dynasty Rewind, the draft guide, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's ways. Look, if you want to start out, you got to spend some money. You got to get some equipment. But don't be afraid to spend a little bit. Don't overspend. And there's ways that you can record and produce things for absolutely free. Audacity is an editing software that you could use. It is 100% free. There's something called VLC Media. Looks like a little traffic cone. If you need to convert any files, or Cloud Converter is free as well. Yeah, and there are ways that you can record with StreamYard. If you just want audio, but you want to see somebody, there is a way to do it. There's different mixers to get where you can just record on the mixer. So there's plenty of ways that you can record and broadcast for free. My DMs are open if you guys have any questions about how to do it as free as possible.
I love it. Now, can you tell listeners where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or X, whatever, at Rewind CEO. Dynasty Rewinds on Instagram, X, Facebook, all that good stuff. We might have a TikTok. I'm not really 100% sure on that one. And you can find the Dynasty Rewind, all podcast platforms, YouTube, to consume our content. We have a Patreon too, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. We're giving out free 1-week trials. So you can come check out the bonus content as well. I put out a bonus podcast, Nate and I, every week. And then we have other guys so sometimes, depending on what those other guys are doing, we could have up to 4 bonus pods a week. So
nice. So yeah, what is the current lineup schedule? Obviously, if you don't know it, top of your head, if multiple people are providing content, but what's the current schedule? And then again, what does the off season look like for you guys?
Yeah, so Josh Hoff does the Hoffcast that comes out on Mondays. Nate and I record Rewind After Dark. That comes out on Tuesday nights. And then Noah Sanders does Decoding the Outcome. That's Friday. And Zach Duarte does Zach's Attack. That comes out on Fridays as well. And after the season, we'll reevaluate any of that stuff. So I don't know if there's going to be any changes to that lineup right now. That's something we'll start hashing out probably December-ish, around there, to see like, hey, how do we want to go forward with this? All that good stuff.
That's right. December, January, right when Dynasty really ramps up, right? You got to get ready for the draft.
We have lots of meetings around that time, which is not my favorite thing to do, but it's got to be done.
But you're setting yourself up for your favorite time of the year. So.
For sure. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming on. Looking forward to seeing what you're doing in the rest of 2024 and beyond.
Yeah. Thank you again for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited Podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.